There were two acts of domestic terrorism in this country, back to back, within, if I'm not mistaken, 24 hours. I woke up that morning and was shocked, and I thought that the papers were getting the names wrong until I realized that no, there were actually two happening within a 24-hour period. Listen to Beto's response to this, because I think this response is on point.
He's been calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals. I don't know, like, members of the press, what the hold on a second. You know, it's these questions that you know the answers to. I mean, connect the dots about what he's been doing in this country. He's not tolerating racism, he is promoting racism. He's not tolerating violence, he's inciting racism and violence in this country.
Beto's point was that these things were being pushed on and incentivized by having Donald Trump in the White House. And look, I think there's some credibility to that. I mean, some of the wording and the phraseology that's being used in that manifesto essentially came up in the words that Donald Trump was using to describe immigrants, or for that matter, the right wing. Joe Biden came out, his campaign also, to give their condolences and to get across his dissatisfaction with the current state of events, with going after and condemning the events that took place in Houston and Michigan. Houston and Michigan. There were 20 people killed in a Walmart and 26 people wounded in that Walmart in El Paso, Texas. There were 9 people killed and 26 people injured in Dayton, Ohio. I am entirely unaware of anything happening in Houston and Michigan, even though I'm aware of clearly something that's happening in Houston, Michigan, but I'm unaware of domestic acts of terrorism. Political Magazine came out and just basically asked the question, is Joe Biden too old? And are these acts that are being considered quote-unquote gaffes really issues of mental confusion? And should that be taken into account when we are trying to put somebody in the office for president? Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content and you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please like this video, share this video. We are trying to push the subscriber count up. Also, if you definitely dig this content, please consider supporting it through PayPal or Patreon. YouTube demonetizes videos at this point, seeming randomly. So this content is brought to you by you. Also, join us for the Patreon Appreciation episodes. Those take place on Sunday, typically after 1 p.m. Oftentimes my wife joined me and we have a really good episode. I put the videos up, so those are up from the last episode. We had like 350 people, so we had a really good showing last time. So definitely join us. We often have a good time, and that's more engagement and standpoint of the audience, even though I know I talk to the audience all the time anyway. So let's deal with this question. Is Joe Biden too old? Now, Politico just basically asked this question. They don't even put for president. I think they're just kind of assuming that you're attaching the for president as opposed to just, is Joe Biden too old? But I do want to ask and engage this particular point. Now, it's not so much age. So right off the bat, I want to answer that question with no as an absolute, meaning age in and of itself is not the thing to which we need to pay attention to. It's more so what age typically implies. This notion of low energy, which, again, Joe Biden exudes at this point. Mental acuity issues, which, again, seems to come out in Joe Biden's campaigns. I mean, these gaffes, again, are issues of, they can call them gaffes, or are these issues of mental confusion and drive? I mean, there were times during the campaign trail where Joe Biden has to take time off. Not to mention, he doesn't seem all that engaged within the policy of it, as if he doesn't really all that much care about the policy. He just wants to be president. I've said that over and over again because I think that's true. He seems low energy. He seems to be disengaged from this process. And the question is finally being asked, is Joe Biden too old to be president? There's another question on this. Why are you running? Like, a 76-year-old man decides that he's going to run for president. Now, he's been running for president for 40 years and been failing at running for president for 40 years because one issue after the next will come up to tank his candidacy. What is the thing that drives you to run for president? Look, clearly, the horse I'm backing in this is Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders is 77 years old. The catch here is that Bernie Sanders is driven, and I don't think anyone has any questions about the fact that Bernie Sanders is driven to be president. He wants to affect his will within the political space, and this is the first time in his lifetime that he's getting the opportunity to do what he wants, to strike when the iron is hot. That's what drives him. That's the thing that gets him out of bed in the morning. That's why he's at all these campaign rallies and events. That's why he's at the labor unions. That's why he's doing what he's doing. I get that. I understand his drive, I understand his energy, I understand his motivation. And he exudes it when he's giving those rousing speeches and when he's going out to those stadiums and going out to those events. I don't see that with Biden. Do you see that with Biden? Be honest. When Biden were in these debates getting handled by Cory Booker at one point and Kamala Harris on the other point, hell, she got to third place on putting the knife in Joe Biden. He seemed out of it. And not just seemed out of it, at one point he said he didn't even expect Kamala Harris to attack him in that way. What do you mean you didn't expect them to attack him that way? They had been attacking you all week. If you did not expect it, why didn't you expect it? And is that somewhat of an indication, again, of losing steps? Now, as a person gets older, that in and of itself is not a disqualifying thing. I've said that on more than one occasion. It's more so what it implies and whether or not the implication is true. That's what matters. And I guess I'm arguing in Biden's case, it seems, at least there's evidence that is indeed true. There's certain mental gaffes that Biden has been making recently that's been bringing these questions up. One, again, the issue with saying that this took place in Michigan, or the shooting took place in Michigan and Houston, which, I have no idea where that happened. He did eventually correct himself, but, it's not one, it's several. The media and the article in Politico kind of makes this point that media doesn't really deal with the age thing. It's kind of taboo. They have no issue at all at asking Bernie Sanders is too old, but for Biden, they deal with it in particular ways about stamina and acuity and all this other stuff. And I got to be honest, I think that's more of an accurate way to do it, because I don't like the age argument. I think the age in and of itself doesn't matter insofar as the person can do the job. If the person can do the job, I don't care if they're 100 years old. It goes with whether or not they can do the job. However, if you are older, then of course these questions are going to be asked. I don't even think it's insane to ask these questions. The question is whether or not they can be sustained. The New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, CNN, the Atlantic, the Associated Press, Slate, and just about every other premium and low-rent outlet that you can name has crossed the ageism line to ask the too old question in recent articles about Joe Biden, 76, often in the headline itself. These pieces render judgment on Biden's physical stamina, quote-unquote damn good, verbal skills, he's a little mush-mouth, processing speed, seems a tad lost sometimes, memory, better on stuff that happened 30 years ago than 5 years ago, and tendency to gaffe. You have to ask. Is it really a gaffe, or is it an indication of mental confusion? The press corps' refusal to resolve the question has made Biden's age and his state of mental and physical fitness the primary lens through which his candidacy is viewed. Was he rusty on the debate stage, Washington Post columnist Karen Tumulty asked, or bewildered at finding himself there? Let me repeat that. Was Biden rusty on the debate stage, or was he bewildered to find himself there? That's a brutal question. I mean, it's funny as all hell, but extremely brutal. Was Biden shocked to find himself on the debate stage? Was it a minor slip of the tongue when he told debate viewers to go to Joe 30330 instead of text Joe to 30330? or does he not know how texting works? Were Biden debate comebacks tellingly slow off the mark, as the New York Times put it, or did he consciously decide the best way to fend off Kamala Harris and Cory Booker punches was rope-a-dope? Essentially, was Biden slow in those debates, or did he just decide that the best way to deal with Kamala Harris and Cory Booker was to get punched repeatedly in the face and to look bad on television? No, he's older. And again, older has certain implications. And insofar as those implications are true, is whether I start to care or not. I understand people are going with this notion that Biden is quote unquote more electable, but there's a certain larger question of whether or not this 76-year-old man who seemed to have mental fuzziness and conscious slips is suitable and capable and mentally fit to hold the office. Is that not a larger question than electability? And I know people don't like me asking this question because they're like, oh, dude, come on, man, that's Joe Biden. Yeah, that's Joe Biden. And I would say if you look at some of the gaffes and the slips and the mental confusion that he's been having recently, there is a question on whether or not he is mentally fit to hold the office. It's the elephant in the room. I'm just going to call it an elephant. Call the elephant an elephant. Let's see, who's here? I'm not going to keep this one long because I have other stories and I have unfortunately, a clinic visit today. Political establishment, including posters, are pushing for Joe Biden to be the 2020 Democratic nominee. If that happens, re-election for Donald Trump. Cool Blue 71. Cool Blue 71, I do think you're right on that. I mean, they're saying Joe Biden is more electable, but I think Joe Biden has certain political weaknesses. One of them is the crime thing. I mean, this was coming up in the Democratic debate, what Kamala Harris hit him on. And I guarantee you what Donald Trump is going to say is, I've been releasing people with my criminal justice program, whereas Joe Biden was putting people in prison. I guarantee you that's what he's going to say. Hypocrisy is not going to matter in this process. It's exactly what he's going to say. Should be a 70-year-old age limit. No, there shouldn't be. Again, I don't make the argument that Joe Biden is too old. That's not my argument. My argument that age implies certain things, and whether or not those things are true is insofar as the person should be judged. You can be 70 years old, you can be 75-year-old. I know people just around me who are older and absolutely fit and mentally there and everything else. So this notion of a 78-year-old age limit, I'm not necessarily going to go with. It's not the issue of whether they're too old. The issue is whether or not that age implies certain deficiencies. I'm arguing in Joe Biden's case, that answer is yes. That answer is yes. That's my only point. Cool Blue 71. There were five, and thank you, Cool Blue. I appreciate it, man. There were 5 20th century incumbent presidents unseated. Taft, Hoover, Ford, Carter, Bush. Opposition party challengers not only delivered change, Wilson, FDR, Carter, Reagan, Clinton changed their parties. Democrats fear burn. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because understand what happens. If Sanders wins, I've said this more than one occasion when I first started this channel. The fear for Sanders has to do with what it means to be a Democrat. What the argument and the debate that's taking place here, yes, Sanders and Biden and everything else, but the argument really is a hegemonic change. It's an interregnum. It's this time period where there's a fight to see what is the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party lost to reality shows. Now, in losing to that reality shows in 1,300 seats, like getting wiped out, an issue of legitimacy comes into play. It has to come into play. How can it not? You can't lose that much and then retain your, air of legitimacy in the face of challenge. This is challenge. This is an attempt to change things. If Bernie Sanders wins the primary, what it means to be a Democrat fundamentally changes. What he's going to push for in that office is going to be different than what 20 years of Democrats have pushed for. You're talking about a reorganization of what it means to be a Democrat. No, it is not going to go as far to the left as we would like. No, he's not going to be nationalizing railroads and things like that. But if you're talking about a realignment of what it means to be a Democrat within this kind of FDR mode of capitalism, that answer is yes. And that's a destruction of third way Democrats. Understand what that, I guess my point is, for them, that fear is their own destruction. If this is what the Democratic Party is, meaning Sanders, then what are regular Democrats? And not just that, what does it mean for the Republican Party if a Bernie Sanders wins? Because for that to take place, you're going to have a media that is going to be cannibalistic. They're going to be off their nut. You're going to have ads telling you that Bernie Sanders is going to crash the country, that he's going to make the U.S. look like Venezuela. You're going to have ads saying that Medicare for All is going to destroy hospitals. You're going to have ads saying that immigrants are going to be crossing the shores in rowboats to get that socialized health care. You're going to have all sorts of scare tactics and ads and everything else. But if he wins through that, then you're talking about a mandate. Like, you're talking about literally not just kicking the door down, but tearing it off the hinges. It is a terrifying prospect to put all of the eggs in a basket of destroying Sanders, because if he wins, oh my God. Just like in the same vein of them trying to do the same thing to Trump, and Trump ends up winning, there can be major change. Trump has so deformed the political space that it creates a luft of room, if that makes sense. Look, this is an exciting time to be in politics, and it's unclear whether or not Sanders can win, but the potential is for him to win. The potential is there. In my lifetime, that has never existed. Yes, Cool Blue, I agree with you, man. I agree with you. All right, I'm going to end this. I'll be back shortly because I have a few more stories that I need to do that I want to do before I leave. So, guys, if you enjoy the content, like, share. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Again, the issue here is not that Biden is old. It's not his age as an absolute. The issue is whether or not he's mentally fit to do the job. And these gaffes, quote unquote, can be indications of mental degradation. That he's not up to it mentally. That he just wants the job because he just wants the job. I don't want you to want a job just because you want a job. I want you to be mentally fit and all the way there for that job. I don't care if you have some age on you. I don't care if you're ancient. That ancientness can bring about a certain degree of knowledge gleaned from those years. I don't get that from Biden. He seems low energy. That's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. He seems low energy. I don't care his age. I care whether he can do the job. And he doesn't seem to be quite up for it.